Why did you stop reading? Vanessa asked, still clutching the lake house keys as our lawyer stared at the page in silence. Mark Keating had been confident when he entered the conference room that morning. He had congratulated my son Adam, reassured my daughter Rachel, and even joked that families rarely divided an estate this smoothly. Now his finger rested beneath a single sentence, and the color had drained from his face. Across the polished walnut table, Vanessa's smile remained fixed. She wore a cream jacket, pearl earrings, and the expression of a woman who believed she had finally won. Beside her, Adam refreshed his banking app while Rachel quietly calculated what she could pay off first. None of them looked at me. They were too busy studying what they had received. The house at Lake Lure. 2 rental properties outside Asheville. Nearly $900,000 in investments. Every item listed in the blue binder Vanessa had carried into my home less than a month after my husband's funeral. I had signed each transfer without raising my voice. I had answered every question clearly. I had even encouraged them to have independent counsel review the documents. Vanessa had called that unnecessary. "We trust you, Eleanor," she had said, though trust had never been what brought us into that room. Judith Sloan, my attorney, sat calmly at my right. She did not interrupt Mark or offer him help. She simply closed her fountain pen and waited. Mark read the sentence again, this time silently. His eyes moved from the document to Adam, then to Rachel, and finally to Vanessa. "What does it say?" Adam asked. Mark loosened his tie. "I need a moment." Vanessa placed the keys on the table with a sharp little click. "A moment for what?" "The transfers are complete." "Yes," Judith said. "They are." Her voice was gentle, but the room changed when she spoke. Vanessa turned toward me. "You told us this was everything." I folded my hands over my purse. My wedding ring caught the morning light, and for one brief second, I remembered Henry turning that same ring around my finger at our kitchen table. He had warned me that grief sometimes revealed what love had hidden. I had not understood him then. I did now. "No," I said. "I told you it was everything you asked for." Rachel stopped tapping her phone. Adam finally looked at me. Vanessa's confidence flickered, then returned in a colder form. "Those are the same thing." "Not always." Mark pushed his chair back, though he did not stand. The paper trembled slightly between his fingers. He understood what the others had not yet realized. The properties and money were not simply gifts. They were proof of a choice. A choice each of them had made freely, repeatedly, and in writing. Judith opened the brown leather file Henry had left behind and placed one final document on the table. Vanessa stared at it. The blue binder beside her suddenly looked less like a plan and more like a confession. 28 days earlier, the flowers from Henry's funeral had still been fresh when she began dividing my life into labeled sections. That was where this story truly began. 28 days earlier, the white lilies from Henry's funeral were still opening on the console table when Vanessa arrived carrying a blue binder against her chest. She did not bring flowers or food. She brought labels. "I thought this might make things easier for you," she said, taking Henry's chair at the dining table without asking. Adam followed her inside with 2 cups of coffee, one for himself and one for his wife. Rachel arrived 10 minutes later and placed her purse on the sideboard beside the framed photograph from our 40th anniversary. No one asked how I had slept. Vanessa opened the binder. 5 tabs divided the pages: house, lake property, investments, company, and personal belongings. My entire marriage had been reduced to 5 neat categories printed in black ink. "This is not about rushing you," she said. "It is about protecting you from unnecessary stress." I looked at Adam. He studied his coffee. Rachel traced a scratch in the table with one finger. Vanessa began with the house. She said the stairs were unsafe, the yard was too large, and the property taxes were unreasonable for a woman living alone. She had already printed information about a senior community 12 miles away. The apartment she circled was 680 square feet. My sewing room was nearly that size. You would have people around you, she said. Activities. Transportation. No responsibilities. She spoke as though responsibility had been a burden placed upon me rather than the foundation of the life Henry and I had built. After lunch, I went upstairs to change the sheets in the guest room. When I returned, Vanessa was standing beside my china cabinet with a sheet of small blue stickers. One was pressed beneath the silver tea service my mother had given me. Another was attached to the back of Henry's grandfather clock. What are those? I asked. Her hand paused. Just inventory markers. For insurance. The insurance company already has photographs. She removed the sticker from the clock and smiled. Then I suppose I am being overly organized. Later, I found 3 more beneath the dining chairs and 1 under the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. That evening, Adam asked for my bank password so he could help monitor expenses. Rachel suggested moving Henry's investment statements to her address because my mail had become too complicated. Vanessa offered to take my name off the company calendar until I felt stronger. Every request arrived wrapped in concern. Every answer had already been decided before they asked. 2 days later, I walked past Henry's study and heard Vanessa speaking behind the partly closed door. Once she signs, she will not have enough left to fight us, she said. Adam answered too softly for me to hear. I stood in the hallway with a basket of clean towels in my arms. I did not enter. I did not confront them. I carried the towels to my bedroom, opened a small notebook in my nightstand, and wrote down the date, the time, and every word I remembered. That was the moment I stopped mistaking their concern for love. The following Monday, I discovered that concern had become access. My monthly bank statement did not arrive. Neither did the notice for the Whitmore Health Supply Board meeting scheduled for Thursday morning. When I called the bank, a young representative politely informed me that my mailing address had been changed 3 days earlier. The new address belonged to Rachel. Who authorized that? I asked. There was a pause, followed by the careful clicking of a keyboard. The request came through your online account. I thanked her, restored my address, and changed every password before hanging up. Then I called the company. My assistant, Marlene, sounded uncomfortable. Vanessa said you needed time away, she explained. She canceled your attendance and asked us to send future materials to Adam. I stood at Henry's desk, looking at the framed photograph of us cutting the ribbon at our first warehouse 34 years earlier. I had handled payroll at our kitchen table before we could afford an accountant. I had negotiated our first hospital contract while Adam was still in elementary school. Yet Vanessa had spoken as though I were a visitor who needed permission to enter the company I had helped build. I asked Marlene to restore my schedule and send copies of every recent communication. Then I opened my notebook and added 2 more entries. That afternoon, Rachel arrived with a folder of unpaid bills that were not mine. She placed them beside my tea and said Henry had promised to help her business before he died. You are keeping money that Dad intended for both of us, she said. Her voice was not loud. That made it worse. Did your father put that promise in writing? I asked. She looked toward the doorway before answering. Vanessa was standing there, holding her phone. Families should not need paperwork, Vanessa said. I looked at the blue binder beneath her arm. You seem to believe otherwise. Her smile tightened. For the next week, invitations stopped reaching me. Sophie did not call on Wednesday as she usually did. When I finally reached her, she sounded surprised. Mom said you needed quiet, she told me. She said visits were making you confused. I closed my eyes, not from confusion, but from recognition. Vanessa was not merely collecting property. She was creating a version of me that other people could believe, grieving, forgetful, dependent, and unfit to make decisions. 2 evenings later, I heard voices in Henry's study again. This time, the door was nearly closed. "The houses are useful," Vanessa said, "but the company is the real value. Once she no longer controls the voting shares, we can sell before the market shifts." Adam murmured something about waiting. Vanessa answered, "Waiting gives her time to change her mind." I returned to the kitchen without making a sound. On the counter sat Henry's old address book. One name had been underlined twice in his handwriting, Franklin Hayes. Before I could reach for the telephone, the doorbell rang. Sophie stood on the porch, holding a sealed envelope against her coat. "Grandma," she whispered, "Mom took this from your mail." Sophie stepped inside and glanced toward the driveway before I closed the door. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, and she held the envelope as though it were something fragile. "I found it in Mom's desk," she said. "It has your name on it." The return address belonged to Judith Sloan, an estate attorney in downtown Asheville. Inside was a notice confirming a meeting regarding the Whitmore Family Trust. The appointment had been scheduled for the previous Friday. I had never seen the letter. "Did your mother say why she took it?" I asked. Sophie lowered her eyes. "She said you did not need more paperwork right now. She also told Dad not to mention Franklin Hayes around you." That name again. I thanked her and placed the envelope beside Henry's address book. Sophie studied my face as though she expected me to break apart. Instead, I warmed 2 slices of apple pie and poured her a glass of milk. We sat at the kitchen table where I had once helped her learn multiplication. "Are you going to tell Mom I brought it?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I need you to stop taking things from her desk. What you did helped me, but I do not want you caught between adults." Relief softened her expression. Before leaving, she wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "I do not think you are confused." After her car disappeared down the street, I called Franklin. He answered on the second ring. His voice was older than I remembered but steady. "Eleanor," he said, "I wondered when you would call." He arrived the next morning carrying a worn brown leather case with brass clasps. Henry had used it during the first years of the company, when every contract mattered and every dollar had a purpose. Franklin placed it on the dining table without opening it. "Henry gave me this 6 months ago," he said. "He told me to keep it until someone tried to separate you from the business." I looked at the blue sticker still clinging beneath the silver tea tray. Then he knew. He suspected. Franklin opened the case. Inside were stock certificates, trust amendments, loan records, and printed copies of emails. The first document carried my name in bold type. I owned 51% of the voting shares in Whitmore Health Supply. Henry had been the public face of the company, but the controlling interest had remained mine since our restructuring 19 years earlier. The second document was an amendment to the family trust. Franklin pointed to one paragraph but did not explain it immediately. "You should read every word with your own attorney," he said. Beneath it lay several emails Vanessa had sent to a corporate advisor, asking how voting control could be transferred if an elderly shareholder became unable to manage her affairs. She had begun planning before Henry died. At the bottom of the case was a sealed letter in my husband's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Henry had written only 1 page. He reminded me that I had built the company beside him, not behind him. His final sentence stayed with me, "Do not punish them, Ellie. Just stop protecting them from the consequences of choices they make freely." I folded the letter, returned it to the envelope, and called Judith Sloan. For the first time since the funeral, I did not feel like something was being taken from me. I felt the pieces returning to their proper places. Judith Sloan met me the following afternoon in a quiet conference room overlooking downtown Asheville. She read Henry's letter first, then the trust amendment, then every page Franklin had brought. She did not rush. When she finally looked up, she folded her hands on the table and said, "Your husband did not create a weapon, Eleanor. He created a boundary." She explained that the trust contained an early distribution provision. Any beneficiary who knowingly requested and accepted a final advance against future inheritance could permanently surrender the remaining interest in the trust. It would only hold if the choice was voluntary, informed, and properly documented. I could not mislead anyone. I could not hide pages, pressure them, or promise something untrue. I would have to give Adam and Rachel time to consult independent counsel. Most importantly, the request had to come from them. If they choose greed, Judith said, the law can recognize that choice. But you cannot make it for them. I thought about the blue binder, the changed mailing address, and the stickers beneath my furniture. I do not need to make it for them, I said. Vanessa already has. Judith arranged a medical evaluation for the next morning. My doctor confirmed in writing that I was alert, capable, and fully able to manage my financial affairs. I restored every account to my control, copied the emails Vanessa had sent, and asked Marlene to preserve all company communications. Then I did something Vanessa never expected. I stopped resisting. When she called that evening to ask whether I had considered the senior community, I told her I was tired of arguing. Silence filled the line before her voice softened into false sympathy. We only want you to feel safe. I know, I said. Perhaps it is time to settle everything. She arrived less than an hour later with Adam and the blue binder. Rachel joined by video call from her apartment. Vanessa sat across from me and opened to the tab marked Lake Property. Her movements were careful, but I could see excitement beneath the performance. We can make this simple, she said. I placed 2 blank sheets of paper on the table. Then each of you should write down exactly what you believe your father intended you to have. Adam glanced at Vanessa. Rachel asked whether I meant specific amounts. Specific property, specific money, specific personal items, I said. Nothing vague. Vanessa began speaking for Adam, but I raised one hand. He should write his own list. For the first time, her smile disappeared completely. Adam asked for the lake house, both rental properties, half of the investment account, Henry's watch collection, and several pieces of furniture. Rachel requested $350,000, the remaining investments, and my mother's diamond bracelet, though it had never belonged to Henry. I did not correct her. I only wrote everything down. Then I asked the question Judith had prepared me to ask. If you receive these assets now, will you consider your inheritance from your father fully settled? Rachel answered first. Yes. Adam looked at Vanessa. She gave him a small nod. Yes, he said. Vanessa leaned forward. You should put that in writing so no one changes the terms later. I closed my notebook and looked at her. That is exactly what I intend to do. 3 nights later, I invited everyone back for Sunday dinner. I made Henry's pot roast with carrots, onions, and small red potatoes, the meal he had prepared whenever the family needed to sit at one table and remember how to speak kindly to one another. The house smelled the way it had before hospital visits, funeral flowers, and blue labels beneath my furniture. For a few minutes, I let myself imagine that the familiar scent might return us to the people we had once been. Sophie arrived first and helped me set the table. She placed Henry's empty chair against the wall without being asked. Adam and Vanessa came together, carrying the blue binder. Rachel arrived 7 minutes late and apologized to Vanessa instead of me. During dinner, they spoke about ordinary things. Whether moving across the Blue Ridge Mountains. A construction project near downtown Asheville. Sophie's college applications. Vanessa praised the roast, then checked her watch twice. The binder rested on the floor beside her chair. When the plates were nearly empty, I placed my napkin beside my fork. Before we discuss property, I want to ask each of you something. Vanessa reached for the binder, but I stopped her with a glance. Is there anything you want from me that has nothing to do with money? No one answered at first. The grandfather clock marked each second from the hallway. Rachel looked down at her hands. Adam cleared his throat, then reached for his water. Vanessa smiled as though I had asked an inconvenient question at a business meeting. Sophie broke the silence. I want you at my graduation, she said. And I want to keep having Wednesday dinners with you. I looked at her and felt something inside me settle. You will, I said. Then I turned to Adam. Anything else? He glanced toward Vanessa. We want you taken care of. That is not what I asked. His face tightened, but he said nothing more. Vanessa lifted the binder onto the table and opened it. Eleanor, this is already emotional enough. We should stay focused. She began reviewing the same list they had written, adding estimated values beside each item. The lake house. The rental properties. The investments. Henry's watches. My mother's bracelet. She spoke with the confidence of someone presenting assets that already belonged to her. When she finished, I looked at Adam and Rachel. Do you want these things now, rather than waiting for the trust to be distributed later? Yes, Rachel said. Yes, Adam followed. Have you considered speaking with your own attorney before making that decision? Vanessa answered before either of them could. Mark Keating has already agreed to represent us. Good, I said. Will you give him every document Judith sends? Of course, Adam replied. I asked whether they understood that the transfer would be final. They both said they did. I asked whether either of them felt pressured by me. They said no. Finally, I asked whether receiving the property and money would settle what they believed Henry owed them. Rachel nodded. Adam said yes. Vanessa leaned back, satisfied. Then we are all in agreement. I looked at Sophie. She was watching her parents with an expression too old for 18. Once this is signed, I said, it cannot simply be undone because someone regrets the result. Vanessa closed the binder. We have waited long enough. There it was. Not grief. Not hesitation. Only impatience. I stood and began clearing the dishes. Before leaving, Vanessa hugged me beside the front door. It was the warmest embrace she had ever given me. Her perfume lingered after they drove away. I locked the door, returned to the dining room, and found one blue label beneath. Henry's chair. I peeled it away, placed it inside my notebook, and called Judith to schedule the signing. Judith scheduled the signing for Thursday morning at her office in downtown Asheville. Before that day arrived, she sent complete copies of every document to Mark Keating, along with written instructions that Adam and Rachel should review them independently. The transfer values were listed in plain language. The lake house had been appraised at $820,000. The two rental properties together were worth just over $1 million. The investment accounts totaled $900,000 before taxes and fees. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was rushed. Judith also included my medical evaluation, the record confirming that I had full control of my finances, and a statement making clear that I could delay or cancel the transfers at any time before signing. Mark replied that his clients understood. Vanessa called me that evening. This is more paperwork than necessary, she said. It makes everything feel suspicious. I stood at the kitchen window, watching rain move across the backyard. Then you should take more time. She was silent for a moment. Adam has already made plans for the lake house. Plans can wait. Rachel needs the money now. Then she should read carefully. Vanessa's voice cooled. You said you wanted peace. I do. She ended the call without saying goodbye. On Thursday, I arrived 10 minutes early with Henry's brown leather case beside me. Judith had arranged water, coffee, and printed copies for everyone. Adam and Vanessa entered first. Vanessa wore the cream jacket she saved for important meetings and carried the blue binder beneath one arm. Rachel followed with Mark Keating. He shook my hand and assured me that his clients had reviewed the documents. Judith asked him directly whether he had explained the final distribution language. He said he had discussed the agreement in full. Vanessa glanced at him, but only for a second. We began with the lake house deed, then the rental properties, then the investment transfers. Each page required initials. Each section included a statement that the recipient was acting voluntarily. Adam signed quickly. Rachel paused only when she reached the tax disclosure, then continued after Mark answered her question. Vanessa leaned close to Adam several times and pointed to signature lines. Judith finally said, "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband should make his own decisions." Vanessa sat back. "I am only helping. He has counsel for that." The room became quiet again. Before the final acknowledgement, Judith looked at Adam and Rachel. "You may take another week. Mrs. Whitmore has authorized me to postpone without penalty." Rachel looked at the account total. Adam looked at Vanessa. "We are ready," he said. "Are you certain?" I asked. "Yes, Mom." Rachel nodded. "I need this settled." They signed the statement confirming that the property and money represented the full distribution they had requested and that they accepted the result as final. Mark notarized their signatures. Judith notarized mine. Vanessa smiled for the first time that morning. When the transfer confirmations appeared on the screen, she placed the lake house keys beside her phone and whispered something to Adam about meeting a realtor. Rachel opened her banking application. Adam thanked Mark. No one noticed Judith remove one last document from Henry's brown leather case. She placed it face down on the table and said, "There is one remaining provision that must be acknowledged for the record." Vanessa's smile did not disappear. "Not yet." Judith scheduled the signing for Thursday morning at her office in downtown Asheville. Before that day arrived, she sent complete copies of every document to Mark Keating, along with written instructions that Adam and Rachel should review them independently. The transfer values were listed in plain language. The lake house had been appraised at $820,000. The two rental properties together were worth just over $1 million. The investment accounts totaled $900,000 before taxes and fees. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was rushed. Judith also included my medical evaluation, the record confirming that I had full control of my finances, and a statement making clear that I could delay or cancel the transfers at any time before signing. Mark replied that his clients understood. Vanessa called me that evening. "This is more paperwork than necessary," she said. "It makes everything feel suspicious." I stood at the kitchen window, watching rain move across the backyard. "Then you should take more time." She was silent for a moment. "Adam has already made plans for the lake house. Plans can wait. Rachel needs the money now. Then she should read carefully." Vanessa's voice cooled. "You said you wanted peace." "I do." She ended the call without saying goodbye. On Thursday, I arrived 10 minutes early with Henry's brown leather case beside me. Judith had arranged water, coffee, and printed copies for everyone. Adam and Vanessa entered first. Vanessa wore the cream jacket she saved for important meetings and carried the blue binder beneath one arm. Rachel followed with Mark Keating. He shook my hand and assured me that his clients had reviewed the documents. Judith asked him directly whether he had explained the final distribution language. He said he had discussed the agreement in full. Vanessa glanced at him, but only for a second. We began with the lake house deed, then the rental properties, then the investment transfers. Each page required initials. Each section included a statement that the recipient was acting voluntarily. Adam signed quickly. Rachel paused only when she reached the tax disclosure, then continued after Mark answered her question. Vanessa leaned close to Adam several times and pointed to signature lines. Judith finally said, "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband should make his own decisions." Vanessa sat back. "I am only helping. He has counsel for that." The room became quiet again. Before the final acknowledgement, Judith looked at Adam and Rachel. "You may take another week. Mrs. Whitmore has authorized me to postpone without penalty." Rachel looked at the account total. Adam looked at Vanessa. "We are ready," he said. "Are you certain?" I asked. "Yes, Mom." Rachel nodded. "I need this settled." They signed the statement confirming that the property and money represented the full distribution they had requested and that they accepted the result as final. Mark notarized their signatures. Judith notarized mine. Vanessa smiled for the first time that morning. When the transfer confirmations appeared on the screen, she placed the lake house keys beside her phone and whispered something to Adam about meeting a realtor. Rachel opened her banking application. Adam thanked Mark. No one noticed Judith remove one last document from Henry's brown leather case. She placed it face down on the table and said, "There is one remaining provision that must be acknowledged for the record." Vanessa's smile did not disappear. "Not yet." The meeting ended without anyone raising a voice. That made the silence afterward feel heavier. Rachel left first, carrying a folder of signed documents against her chest. Adam followed several minutes later, but Vanessa remained by the door as though she expected me to apologize. "You destroyed this family," she said. I looked at the blue binder beneath her arm. "No," I replied. "I stopped paying to keep it together." She turned and walked out. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from any of them except Sophie. She came every Wednesday, just as she had promised, and we ate dinner at the kitchen table. I did not ask her to choose sides. I never spoke against her parents. Children should not be made responsible for the failures of adults. Rachel called first. The money she received had allowed her to settle most of her business debt. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. She apologized, but the apology came with explanations about fear, pressure, and what Vanessa had told her. I listened until she finished. "I hope you use what you received wisely," I said. "But I will not change the trust." She began to cry. I did not rescue her from the answer. Adam arrived at my house 2 days later. He stood on the porch with his hands in his coat pockets and looked more like the uncertain boy I had once waited for after school than the man who had signed away his future inheritance. "Vanessa says you trapped us," he said. "What do you say?" I asked. He stared at the floorboards. "I should have read everything." "That is not the only thing you should have done." He looked up. I told him that regret was not the same as responsibility. Before we could rebuild anything, he would have to admit that he had treated me as an obstacle, allowed his wife to isolate me, and valued property more than my dignity. He was not ready to say those words. So I did not invite him inside. By spring, Vanessa had listed the lake house for sale. The property taxes, insurance, and repairs were far more expensive than she had expected. Adam asked whether I would cover part of the maintenance until it sold. I said no. It was the house they had insisted on receiving. It belonged to them completely, along with every cost attached to it. I returned to the Whitmore Health Supply boardroom in April. My chair had remained empty, but it had never stopped being mine. I established a protected college fund for Sophie that neither parent could access. I also created a financial counseling program for older widows facing pressure from relatives after a spouse died. Judith helped me design it. Franklin agreed to serve as an advisor. I kept my home in Asheville. I removed every blue label Vanessa had left, except one. That one stayed inside my notebook beside the dates, the changed addresses, and Henry's final letter. It reminded me that boundaries often look cruel to people who benefited from their absence. I had spent years believing that love meant giving until nothing remained of me. At 72, I finally understood that love without respect was only another bill my family expected me to pay.